In today's video, we're looking into the fascinating innovations and strategic brilliance that played crucial roles in the D-Day landings and the subsequent Battle of Normandy. Both the Allies and the Germans pushed the limits of science in the race for victory, leading to breakthroughs for some of the technologies we know today. Join us as we explore 7 D-Day innovations that aimed to change the fate of the war. In 1940, the Germans captured the Eben-Emael fortress using gliders to transport 78 paratroopers, a bold move at that time. Following this success, the British Air Ministry issued a new specification calling for a large glider aircraft capable of transporting up to 30 fully equipped paratroopers. One stipulation was to construct the aircraft primarily from wood to preserve the scarce metal supply. A company named Airspeed was among those that received the specifications and produced initial models at Hatfield under the supervision of Alfred Hessel Tiltman. The final design of the new glider was accomplished in just 11 months, an impressively short time frame, considering Britain's challenging situation in its war against the Nazis. Furthermore, the Battle of Britain was raging over the skies of London and the south of England, where the final design was perfected. After numerous improvements and refinements, the Airspeed AS-58 Horsa 2 was born and ready for a significant challenge. On D-Day, these gliders were used on an unprecedented scale to transport troops and supplies to Normandy. They were towed by transport or bomber aircraft before gliding into the landing zone, where supplies were retrieved. The hinged nose and removable tail section facilitated relatively easy cargo unloading without damaging the overall structure. Due to design challenges, the gliders were thin and difficult to operate, often resulting in violent structural failures upon landing. Moving next, some unusual vehicles played a crucial role in the D-Day landings, the Battle of Normandy, and the campaign in Northwest Europe. The Allies learned a significant lesson after the failed amphibious attack on Dieppe, encountering difficulties in bypassing German coastal defenses. In early 1943, the 79th Armored Division, under the command of Major General Sir Percy Hobart, was tasked with developing equipment and tactics for specialized tasks in support of ground troops on and after D-Day. This decision proved to be a great choice, as Hobart not only enhanced existing designs, but also created new ones. The armored vehicles of the 79th became widely known as Hobart's Funnies. The duplex drive swimming Sherman was an amphibious tank used on all 5 beaches on D-Day. The duplex drive engine powered propellers in water and tracks on land. The canvas flotation screen helped the tank float without sacrificing armor or firepower. Ashore, the screens were dropped and the tank became fully operational. This innovation provided almost immediate support for the invading infantry forces. The Crab was a Sherman tank equipped with a roller fitted with weighted chains, an attachment used for mine-clearing purposes. Despite not being a new invention, under Hobart's direction, the flail was adapted for use on the Sherman. The flail was powered by the tank's main engine. Additionally, the Sherman retained its 75mm gun, which could be fired as usual when the flail was not in use. The Churchill AVRE was a modified Churchill tank fitted with a petard spigot mortar, designed primarily to demolish steel and concrete structures. Do you wonder what AVRE stands for? It stands for Armored Vehicle Royal Engineer. Specialized equipment could be added to the AVRE to enable it to perform other tasks, making it akin to a British Swiss knife. These are just a few examples of the innovative vehicles used back then. Planning the future invasion of Europe, everyone involved knew it would be the largest amphibious landing in history. The planners also knew that the success of this operation depended heavily on the petrol supplies. A loss of momentum could be fatal, as German forces would have time to regroup and even counterattack. Conventional tankers and pipelines were not a solution because of the constant threat posed by the Luftwaffe. The only logical solution left was a pipeline under the English Channel. Operation Pluto, Pipeline Under the Ocean, was designed to supply petrol from storage tanks to the advancing Allied armies in France in the weeks and months following D-Day. Development of this idea began as early as 1942. Constructing flexible yet pressure-resistant pipes and leak-free couplings presented a significant challenge. For this innovation to succeed, petrol needed to be stored in the south of England, a vulnerable zone, as it could easily be targeted by the Luftwaffe. It is estimated that between August 1944 and May 1945, Pluto delivered over 172 million gallons to France. Pluto, the world's first undersea oil pipeline, made a significant contribution not only to the Allied war effort, but also to future commercial pipeline development. Let's move on. In order to maintain the momentum and not offer the Germans a chance to regroup, the Allies had to develop a solution to constantly build up reinforcements in Normandy. Previous experience taught the Allies important lessons about the need to secure harbors and ports. Harbors provided protection against bad weather, and ports provided a place to ferry men and cargo. The planners came up with the idea to create two artificial harbors, the so-called Mulberries, by sinking outdated or deteriorated ships known as corn cobs and large concrete structures called phoenixes. Then they added flexible steel roadways, codenamed whales, that allowed them to utilize the beachhead as an improvised port. The roadways terminated at great pierheads, called spuds, that were jacked up and down on legs that rested on the seafloor. Let's speak about the Germans now. When Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was tasked with overseeing German defenses in Normandy, he anticipated the invasion occurring at high tide, when the beachhead would be at its narrowest. He also recognized that Germany would likely lose the war if they failed to halt the invasion on the beaches. Aware that Allied troops would be exposed to German fire for a limited time upon landing, he devised a plan to impede their progress as much as possible. Rommel developed a series of underwater obstacles designed to remain hidden during mid and high tides, ensuring that the invaders faced additional challenges in reaching the shore. The Czech hedgehog was a type of beach obstacle used by the Axis powers, particularly Germany, to hinder the Allied amphibious landings. The spikes were designed to penetrate the hulls of landing craft and prevent them from landing on the beaches, while the interlocking beams made it difficult to remove or bypass the obstacle. Some were rigged with explosives that would detonate on impact. The Allies developed a variety of countermeasures, including explosive charges, flail tanks, and specialized landing craft with retractable ramps to bypass or remove obstacles. Rommel also devised a network of tall wooden posts fixed vertically into the ground to hinder glider landings in open areas. These defenses became known as Rommel's asparagus. Despite the German forces deploying over 1 million of these poles and fields, their impact on the Normandy invasion was inconsequential. No matter where the Allies decided to invade Nazi-occupied France in the spring of 1944, the tide was going to be an important determinant in the success or failure of the amphibious assault. Along the northern French coast, the difference between low tide and high tide exceeded 6 meters. At low tide, a large portion of the beach was exposed, leaving the Allied troops vulnerable to heavy German fire as they attempted to cross it. German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was well aware of tidal issues. He had been tasked by Adolf Hitler with building the so-called Atlantic Wall to defend against the anticipated invasion. Rommel repeatedly told his troops, "When they come, it will be at high tide." He wasn't wrong. The 53-year-old Arthur Thomas Doodson was at that time the world's leading authority on tide prediction. The tide prediction machine, known as the Tide Predicting Machine No. 2, was essentially a complex analog computer designed to calculate tidal patterns based on various factors, such as the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon, as well as the shape of the coastline. Using data collected from tide gauges and other sources, the machine could generate tidal predictions for specific locations and dates. Once the invasion began, the tide predictions proved to be quite accurate, and the rest is history. Thousands of landing craft were utilized to transport personnel and equipment across the English Channel on D-Day. Various types of craft were employed, ranging from small assault landing craft, primarily for personnel, to large landing ships designed to carry tanks and heavy equipment. Some of these craft were armed with guns and rockets. Remarkably, there was even a specific type of landing craft dedicated to preparing soldiers' meals, known as the landing barge kitchen. The deployment of landing craft enabled the Allies to land troops and heavy machinery, including tanks, on heavily defended beaches that were not initially designated for such operations. By facilitating the direct delivery of equipment to the beaches, landing craft also served as a temporary solution to the challenge of securing the harbors and ports necessary for the immediate buildup of personnel and supplies. While the development of specialized landing craft commenced early in the war, it was not until D-Day that they were utilized on such a massive scale.